Welcome to the deep dive. We're going deep today on something that happened just recently, June 28th, 2025. It's an event that really starkly highlights the ongoing challenges the nation is facing. We're going to unpack the tragic details of a suicide attack in North Waziristan, Pakistan, and sort of explore what it tells us about the wider issue of militancy there. Our goal today is really to get past the headlines, help you understand the layers underneath.
Absolutely. And it's striking how one single terrible event can really shine a light on dynamics that are so complex, so tangled together. So yeah, our aim is to move beyond just the immediate news report. We want to look at the impact, sure, but also the history behind it and what the implications might be going forward, hopefully giving you a much clearer sense of why this event is so significant, not just for Pakistan, but frankly for the whole region's stability.
Okay, so let's dive into the specifics of this incident. June 28th, 2025, around 3:29 p.m. local time, IST. Can you give us a sense of what exactly happened that day in North Waziristan? It's in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, right?
That's right. Yeah, so what we understand is a suicide bomber, they were driving a vehicle packed with explosives, and the target was specifically a military convoy moving through the area. The blast itself was massive, immense force, and the immediate result was just horrifying. 13 soldiers were killed right
It's
there.
13 killed. That's
Yeah,
that's a heavy toll immediately.
it is. And beyond those fatalities, another 29 people were wounded. Now, that number includes 10 more Army personnel, but also, significantly, 19 civilians who were just nearby, caught in the blast. And among the soldiers, 4 were critically injured, so really touch and go for them.
And this is something that often gets lost, isn't it? The wider impact. It wasn't just the convoy that was hit. You mentioned civilians, but I also heard about nearby houses.
Exactly. The explosion was so powerful that it actually caused the roofs of 2 nearby houses to collapse. And tragically, 6 children were inside those homes and were injured.
Oh, terrible.
It just underscores, the indiscriminate horror of this kind of attack. The cost goes far beyond the intended target.
Absolutely devastating. And do we know who is claiming responsibility for this?
Yes, the claim came from the Hafiz Gul Bahadur group. Now, it's important to understand they're a faction, a known faction, operating under the wider umbrella of the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, the TTP.
Right, the TTP. We hear that name a lot in connection with Pakistan. What should we know about them?
Well, the TTP really coalesced, formed officially, back in 2007. They brought together various militant factions, and they quickly gained notoriety for some truly horrific, high-profile attacks. The one many people will sadly remember is the Peshawar school massacre in 2014. Over 140 killed, mostly children, just gut-wrenching. Their stated aim, to overthrow the Pakistani government and impose their own strict version of Islamic law, Sharia.
And how do they relate to the Afghan Taliban? Is it the same group or?
That's a really important point of clarification. They share a similar hardline Islamist ideology. Yes, you could say they're ideologically aligned. But the TTP is distinct. It's focused specifically on Pakistan, its government, its state. It has its own leadership and agenda. So while they might cooperate or find safe haven sometimes across the border, they are separate entities. Fighting them isn't the same as fighting the Afghan Taliban. It's a crucial difference.
Okay, that distinction is helpful. So turning back to the location, North Waziristan, why is this specific district so often in the news for militancy? What makes it such a persistent trouble spot?
North Waziristan, yeah, it's in that Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, formerly known as the tribal areas Fada. And it's been a real focal point for militant groups for, well, decades now. A big part of it is the geography. It's incredibly rugged, mountainous terrain, difficult to access, difficult to control, and crucially, it shares that long, porous border with Afghanistan.
Ah, the border. That always seems central to the issue.
It absolutely is. Historically, that combination, the tough terrain and the easy access across the border, made it an ideal place for groups like the TTP to hide out, to train, to regroup. Think of it like a natural sanctuary with escape routes built in. Plus, there's a history of, let's say, limited central government reach in these areas, which allowed insurgents room to operate. It makes security incredibly challenging.
And we've seen or certainly heard reports of a significant increase in violence in Pakistan, especially since the Taliban took back control of Afghanistan in 2021. Is that connection as direct as it seems?
It's definitely a major factor, though. As always, it's complex. But yes, since August 2021, Pakistan has seen a really sharp, undeniable surge in militant attacks, particularly concentrated in those western provinces, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, where North Waziristan is, and also neighboring Balochistan.
Do we have any sense of the scale?
We do. The data is pretty grim. Just since the start of this year, 2025, We're looking at around 290 people killed in attacks across those two provinces. And the majority of those killed are security officials, police, army personnel. It shows who the primary targets often are. So yes, the volatility is extreme, and it seems to be escalating.
Even despite past military efforts, I recall major operations there.
Exactly. Pakistan has launched very significant military campaigns. Operation Zarbi-Az back in 2014 was huge, aimed at clearing North Waziristan specifically. And then Operation Fasad followed in 2017, trying to consolidate those gains across the country. But as this latest attack and the overall trend show, achieving lasting peace, fully eliminating the threat has proven incredibly difficult. That porous border remains a huge vulnerability.
So this attack on June 28th, it really isn't happening in a vacuum. It sounds like just one example in a worrying pattern this year alone.
That's absolutely right. It fits into a broader, disturbing picture for 2025. If you look back, March 4th this year, there was a combined attack and Banu suicide bombing, plus an assault on a military base. 18 people died there. Then in April, in Mastan, Balochistan, a bus carrying security personnel was hit. 3 soldiers killed, 20 injured. So this June 28th incident, horrific as it is, follows that pattern. It shows these groups are not only willing, but still very capable of planning and executing deadly, complex attacks.
Resilience seems to be the word. Despite counterterrorism pressure, they keep managing to strike.
They do. It suggests they've found ways to regroup, maybe rearm, possibly leveraging the situation across the border in Afghanistan. They adapt their tactics. It's a constant challenge for the security forces.
You mentioned the border again. If we trace this back, where do the very deep roots of this kind of violence lie? How did we get here?
Well, you really have to go back decades. Many analysts point to the 1979 Soviet invasion of Afghanistan as a critical turning point. During the 80s, Pakistan, with international backing, supported the Afghan Mujahideen fighting the Soviets. While strategically understandable at the time, that policy had long-term consequences. It flooded the region with weapons. It also arguably fostered a culture of armed resistance and jihad, and helped radicalize elements both within Afghanistan and across the border in Pakistan. Seeds were sown then that are still bearing bitter fruit.
So the legacy of that conflict is still playing out?
Very much so. And then more recently, the Taliban's return to in Afghanistan in 2021 added a whole new layer of complexity. Pakistan has repeatedly and publicly accused the Afghan Taliban government of, well, basically sheltering TTP militants, giving them safe havens inside Afghanistan to plan and launch attacks back into Pakistan.
How does Kabul respond to that?
Kabul consistently denies it. They usually say the violence is Pakistan's internal problem, or they lack the capacity to fully control their side of the border. This back and forth, these accusations and denials, obviously puts a huge strain on relations between the two countries and makes any kind of coordinated counterterrorism effort extremely difficult.
Right. So given that complicated history, that difficult relationship, and this current surge, what exactly has the Pakistani government been doing recently, beyond those past big operations?
Well, the large-scale operations like Zarbi-Az and Fasad were the main kinetic efforts. They did achieve some success, undeniably. Many militants were killed or captured, infrastructure was dismantled, some areas were cleared, allowing, a semblance of government control to return. But the recent spike in attacks shows that those gains were perhaps not permanent, or that the threat is just incredibly adaptable.
It suggests the militants can just melt away and come back.
Exactly. You can regroup, find new recruits, exploit those ungoverned spaces, or slip across the border. So the military operations continue, often smaller scale, intelligence-based operations now trying to preempt attacks. But it's like playing whack-a-mole sometimes. The threat persists.
Which implies it's not just about military force, is it? Are there deeper issues that keep feeding this cycle?
Absolutely. And that's the crucial point many analysts make. It's a dual challenge. Yes, you need the security response to deal with the immediate violence, but you also have to address the root causes that make these areas fertile ground for militancy in the first place. We're talking about decades of neglect in some of these tribal areas. Deep-seated poverty, lack of education, very few economic opportunities, especially for young men.
So grievances that extremist groups can exploit.
Precisely. They offered a sense of purpose, identity, even income to people who feel marginalized or left behind by the state. Add to that ongoing issues with governance, maybe corruption, a feeling of injustice. It creates an environment where the narrative of the militants can unfortunately find resonance. Without tackling those socioeconomic problems, without providing real alternatives, military action alone is unlikely to bring lasting peace.
It seems like a truly multifaceted problem, and you've mentioned the border with Afghanistan several times. How does this situation ripple outwards? What are the international dimensions?
They're significant. The Afghanistan connection is paramount. That porous border is, frankly, a nightmare for security planners. It allows for that cross-border movement. We talked about fighters, weapons, ideology. It's led to instances where Pakistan has actually conducted airstrikes inside Afghanistan, claiming they were targeting TTP hideouts.
Which must cause huge friction with the Taliban government.
Immense friction, accusations of violating sovereignty, denials. It really poisons the well for any potential cooperation. The Afghan Taliban's perceived unwillingness, or perhaps inability, to crack down effectively on TTP sanctuaries on their soil is a major sticking point. And this doesn't just affect Pakistan and Afghanistan. It raises concerns across the region about stability, about the potential for conflict spillover, and it complicates international efforts focused on counterterrorism and development in Central and South Asia. It's a regional destabilizer.
And bringing it back home, for the people living in Pakistan, particularly in these affected areas, what is the day-to-day cost of living under this constant threat? How does it impact society, the economy?
The impact is profound and pervasive. On a human level, it creates this constant atmosphere of fear, of anxiety. Daily life gets disrupted. People are afraid to go to markets. Children's schooling gets interrupted. Travel becomes risky. The attack on June 28th, injuring those children in their homes, is just a heartbreaking illustration of that. Families are torn apart by loss, and the injured face incredibly long roads to recovery, physically and psychologically.
And economical.
Economically, the cost is enormous. Firstly, there's a direct cost of security. Huge amounts of the national budget have to be diverted to the military, to intelligence, to policing, just to manage the threat. That's money that could desperately be used for development, for schools, hospitals, infrastructure, job creation, the very things that might address those root causes we discussed. Plus, the insecurity itself is terrible for the economy. It scares off foreign investment. It damages tourism. It disrupts trade. It puts a real brake on potential growth and prosperity. Security analysts often point out the fact that these groups can still mount such deadly attacks demonstrates they remain a potent, ongoing threat to Pakistan's overall stability and future. So when we look closely at this June 28th attack, it really serves as this tragic, stark reminder of the incredibly difficult, complex battle Pakistan is fighting against militancy. We see the government's efforts, we see the sacrifices of the security forces, but we also see the undeniable resilience of groups like the TTP. It just highlights, very powerfully, the need for an approach that isn't just about security crackdowns, but something much more comprehensive, much more sustainable over the long term.
Yeah, it's absolutely clear this isn't confined to North Waziristan or even just Pakistan. It has these deep regional, even global connections and consequences. The path towards any kind of lasting peace looks incredibly challenging, filled with these intricate problems. So as we wrap up, maybe the question to leave our listeners with is this: what does tackling such a deep-rooted, complex issue truly require? Is it more about refining security tactics, or is the fundamental shift needed somewhere else entirely, perhaps, in addressing those underlying socioeconomic and political grievances? It's a complex balance, and finding the right path forward remains the core challenge, something to definitely keep thinking about.